Business Focus with Kudzie, Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.
Kudzie, as always, let's begin with our Zimbabwe Stock Exchange trading update for last week Friday.
Thank you, Tinashe. Yeah, looking at the ZSE, I think we are still on that path where we continue to see the market seesawing into the positive and negative territory. On Friday, it was, however, positive with all share index putting on 1.4%, the top 10 index adding 1.73%, and the VFX just a marginal 0.26% to the good. Top risers for the day, FML are doing a 50.46% gain there. Machinery and Holdings putting on 4.53%, TSL 12.44%, Hippo 9%, and then Unifreight 1%. Then looking at the losers there, Star Africa easing by 0.29%, Tanganda 18.37% in the negative, Eco Cash down by 3.76%, and as ZHL also coming off as well as Tenau. Most investors were putting their funds into Delta, about 19.4 million. Zig changing hands there, 3.1 million in Econet, and then 2.8 million in Eco Cash. Marsh and Pro Plastics were also amongst the counters that received a sizable chunk of the funds that were invested. Looking at other instruments that are listed on the ZSE, the Morgan & Co. made in Zim ETF putting on 14.65%. The Morgan & Co. multi-sector ETF putting on 9.05%. This Old Mutual ZSE Top 10 ETF adding 0.16%. And then looking at the Real Estate Investments Trust, the Revitas ETF the Revitas rate putting on 3.26%. Tigere rate also adding 4.44%. So Real Estate Investment Trust there also putting on positive gains. That's on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Looking at the VFX, it was a mixed bag there with African Sun putting on 3.65%. Also positive was FCB, that's First Capital Bank, adding 0.6%. Padenga also positive, up by 0.22%. Simbisa putting on 0.62%. West Property and Zimpla also positive. And then the losers were Edgar's, a massive 20.31% drop there. Inscore easing 0.27%. Citco International also amongst the losers, down by 0.14%. So that's how the market traded on Friday. I think we will continue to see the market trading sideways probably for the rest of this week, unless there is really some injection of liquidity into the market. But as I see it, the market is likely to continue to trade sideways.
Right, great. Thanks for that update from last week Friday. But remember, we've got a question for you as you're listening to Business Focus right here on Capitoka. In your company or your job, what are likely to be your focus areas this week? Do you plan, or it's just a routine that you do? Let's hear from you on our WhatsApp platform 0719 100404. Kudzie, let's look at the regional and international markets.
Thank you, Tinashe. So just looking at the regional markets, I'm looking at the market all share index in South Africa. On Friday, it was positive by 0.89%. And then you go up north in Egypt, the market was down by 2.6%. In Nairobi Stock Exchange in Kenya, the all share index was up by 1.22%. And then you look at the Semdex, that's in Mauritius, up by 1.05%. You go to the Uganda Stock Exchange, putting on 1.15%. And then you go to Namibia, the overall share index up by 1.41%. You go to Botswana, where it was positive by 1.35%. So it looks like the only market that recorded huge losses was the Egyptian market, down by 2.63%. Although the markets in Tanzania were also in the negative territory. That's on Friday. So looking at that board, you can actually see that most of the markets in the continent were on the positive trajectory. And then so that's how the markets were looking like from a regional point of view. Just trying to look at now the the international markets in terms of how they performed on Friday, just starting with the FTSE 100, that's the market in the UK, which was positive by 0.19%. So again, not much movement there. You go into the UX, still in the London Stock Exchange rather, up by a margin of 0.025%. And then we move over to the United States, where the S&P 500 put on as 0.61%. You look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average putting on 0.97%. And then you go to Japan, the Nikkei up by Nikkei 225 up by 0.57%. And then so that's how markets were looking like on the international front. You're asking a very interesting question there in terms of whether people plan or it's just a routine tasks that you do every day. I think for me there is a bit of a routine in terms of the task, but again, every day you try and improve the efficiencies. If you try to improve your services or your products to make sure that they are better than the last time around. I think you should always be looking at how you can innovate, especially in Zimbabwe, where the cost of doing business is on the high side. You always try to see where can you cut costs. I know some will cut costs to the point of making the quality of the service or of the product poor. So which is really bad, because you're just cutting costs, but at the end of the day your product becomes of poor quality. But I think it's important to then look at all your cost structures and making sure that you try as much as you can to reduce the cost of doing business. You also look at how you can hedge yourself. If you're trading in ZIG, for example, there's always that can I call it a threat of or risk rather? Yeah, in business, I think we can talk of risk. There's always a risk that whatever your holdings, if it is ZIG, it might lose value. So you always want to see how best can you hedge. Do you hedge yourself through investments? Do you hedge yourself through buying into your raw materials more than you would normally buy? For example, you find out when faced with such situations, people then stock more raw materials than they normally do. So sometimes some people say, I'll keep 3 months cover or 6 months supply of raw materials, but because of the situation, no, I'm now going to extend that period. But again, it comes with costs, because wakuda maybe a bigger warehouse, wakuda it's a but all those things, those are some of the things that you have to look at to say, how best can I preserve value for myself? Also, how best can I improve my products?
All right, Kudzie, when we look at buying shares, is it something that I look at the board today, I say Delta is doing well or K Zimbabwe is doing well, and Pandango I buy, or there's a time frame that you are supposed to take, which is start at the floor of the counters that you want to buy? What do we do? Do you plan about it, or you just go and see what's happening on that day and you buy?
There are several investments methods that people use. Some would then look at the fundamentals of the company. I would, for example, I wouldn't want to buy shares during a bull run when the markets are rallying. For me, it's not a good time to be buying shares. I want to buy when shares are on a bear run. Yes, when they are coming off, or maybe when you think they are now undervalued. So again, you need to look at the fundamentals that will give you and try and calculate what they call the intrinsic value, which is the real value of the shares. Because market $10 uri kudhura chofana kuita $8 imarket inenge ichikudaro handiti. So with shares as well, the market might say this company is worth so much, but iwewe ukaita inonzi calculation of the intrinsic value, kune methods anoshandiswa to calculate that intrinsic value. No, this company, as much as it is trading at 5 cents, this company is a 20 cents company. So you then say, as long as it's trades at 5 cents, I'm going to buy it. as long as I've got cash. Ikangosvika pa 5 cents. Kune makambani atotoziva kuti unotongoziva kuti ikasvika pa 8 cents cheaper and you buy, then it gets to its closer to its intrinsic value. So and then there's dollar cost average strategy again, where you're just saying inini ndikangotambira 5 days after my payday I'm going to invest. You don't care what the price is like at that moment, because what you are saying, you're averaging your prices. So sometimes, because you're doing it same time every month, so sometimes you're buying on the 5th. Let's say you're buying on the 5th every month. Sometimes you buy on the 5th, but the market is on a rally. Sometimes you buy on the 5th and the market is on a bear run. So at the end of the day, they average. That's why it's called dollar cost average strategy. So that's another way of investing as well. Yeah.
All right. Let's look at the currencies and commodities. How are they faring?
Commodities and currencies. Let me just go to my. So let's start with the commodities. Just looking at Brent. That's Brent in terms of fuel. It's trading at $78.13. I think it's. At some point, we had seen fuel per barrel going as high as more than $100 per barrel, but it looks like at the moment Brent is trading at $78.13. Crude oil is trading at $74.69. What else do we use? And then looking at other commodities that we can look at, gold is trading at $2,656. $53. So just looking at gold, Tinashe, interesting story there. Remember, at some point the Arabs had issued gold coins, and when they were issued, they were trading at $1,823. And we were saying that the gold coins will help those who buy them preserve value. So when you say value preservation, we are saying at least you can maintain your value. The risk of losing value is less when you're invested in gold, in this case, gold coins. That's what we were saying then. But it looks like it is actually outdo itself, because at that point, when gold coins were trading in 1,823, but now the price of gold itself is now at 2,600. Those days it was below 2,000. Now it's 2,656. You can see those who bought the gold coins are in the money. They've really done well, more than the preservation of value. And then away from gold, we also have platinum, which is trading at $974.20. Again, platinum, they're still struggling. At some point, it was trading above $1,000 per ounce, but now it's trading at $974. So that's why we saw, because of these low prices, that's why we saw earlier in the year or late last year, platinum miners actually retrenching. Even at managerial level, they were retrenching. So that's in terms of commodities. And then looking at currencies, the euro is trading at 0.91 to the dollar. The pound is trading at 0.76 to the dollar. It seems like the dollar has really gained against the pound there. Normally, it's trading at 0.71 to the dollar, but at the moment, 0.76 to the dollar. And then looking at the South African rand, the rand is really strengthened. I'm not sure whether it is because of the GNU government and positive sentiment from investors, but the rand has really done well. I think for the whole of last year, maybe a few or so days, that's when it was below 18, but at the moment it has been strong at 17.46 rand per dollar. And I think what it then means is that from Zimbabwe, for example, if you are importing from South Africa, you are now needing more dollars to import from South Africa, because the rand is stronger than it was last year.
Saka zvikureva kuti kana when the rand is strengthening, it's a disadvantage on our side.
A big disadvantage. Ndopai patinozotanga kutaura kuti dollarization is not good for us when it's like that. Because as you can see there, for things, it means that those who are in South Africa, whatever they are producing, they can now get more dollars from us. Isusu takubhadhara more in terms of dollars to whatever we were buying in South Africa. So it's the dollarization becomes a challenge there. And then looking at the Zambian kwacha, it's 26.46 to the dollar. So the Zambian kwacha, I think, things are not looking good there in Zambia, considering what's happening with electricity, where sometimes, especially residential areas, they only get power maybe for 3 hours. And you know how it is with African countries. Zimbabwe residential areas, but some people actually don't industry, maybe a welder and things like that.
Yeah. All right, Kudzie, thank you so much for Business Focus for today.
Business Focus with Kudzie Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.